Hello and welcome to this new episode of The One Report here on this very channel. I hope that wherever in the world you are having a good day, morning, evening, whatever it is. As always, here on this channel for The One Report, it is a Monday morning. We are going to be talking about the previous week of news from One Championship. I've got myself a lovely cup of tea here that is a little bit too hot to drink right now, but throughout the course of this episode, I'm sure I will start to make an indent on it. There's not loads to talk about, in all honesty. We have some big fights announced, but they were big fights that we either knew about or, it's a really big card, 1169. And so it's not like, whoa, we have a new main event. We've got a couple of good fights announced and a new title fight in place of a old title fight, a rebooked title fight as well. So we have spoken about this fight already. Actually, I don't think I made a video about this fight. And obviously it didn't end up happening, so I didn't do a preview for it either. So maybe we haven't spoken about it. So we will make sure that we get to that in this video. That's what we're going to be chatting about. In terms of One Championship news, like I said, not a ton to get into on this particular episode. It does feel like it was a busy week for combat sports, but just not loads from One Championship's point of view. We are entering a little bit of a not necessarily a lull period. I don't think that would be fair to say, but we have 169 coming up at the start of November, and there is not a fight night or a big Friday fights card or anything like that until then. So I do expect there to be a couple of quiet weeks, but also One Championship have kind of teased, Chattery has teased that they've got some big announcements coming up very soon. I think that'll be a big show in December that is looking like Qatar, I believe I've heard. I haven't looked into that too much, to be honest. Just kind of heard it here and there dotted around. So we'll see what happens with that, and I think we might get maybe some more details for the US shows for next year, maybe a Japan card announcement soon. So we will see what we get, really. But yeah, like I said, it felt like a busy week for combat sports. I'm sure whatever you guys decided to spend your weekend watching, you had a good time watching it, because pick your poison, Beterbiev Bivol, of course, if you're a boxing fan, was a huge deal. I very much enjoyed, as a big time supporter of the flyweights. I very much enjoyed the UFC main event between Brandon Royval and Tatsuro Taira. We should get more flyweight main events, because flyweight fights over 5 rounds makes a lot of sense. And it was a great fight. We got some big fight announcements from the UFC as well. Bilal Muhammad and Shavkat at UFC 310, which I'm very excited for, and also Alexandre Pantoja versus Kai Asakura. That's the one. Super stoked for that. I enjoyed watching Octagon 62. They put on a huge event in Germany, one of the biggest events in the history of MMA. So fair play to them, fair play to all involved. I will be covering that, I'm sure, in the following hours and things like that. I need to go back and watch some of it back. I've only seen a little bit. As always, there's too much. I haven't watched any Glory from this past weekend. So yeah, I need to get around to that. And I've been watching AEW as well. It was a busy weekend, like I said, but not too busy for One Championship. We do have, and Payak is back this week at One Friday Fights. I'm sure we'll be chatting about that next week. He isn't like the main event or anything like that. He's like the 6th fight of the night. But that works out quite well for me here in the UK. Time zone wise, Payak will probably be fighting for me around like 3 p.m., 4 p.m., something like that. So I'll be tuning in and watching some Payak at that time, which is lovely stuff. In terms of stuff that I've been covering that is One Championship related this past week, a fair bit of it has been about Jonathan Haggerty, who has been doing some interviews. It was with the Sky Sports podcast, and he was chatting a little bit about the loss to Superlek and how he's been able to kind of reflect on that and come through it, and the difficult moment, of course, that it was, but also some of the lessons he's been able to learn from that, coming back stronger, all of that sort of stuff. Burying the hatchet with Liam Harrison, which I think we mentioned already, because Liam, I think, had said that already. But Haggerty kind of spoke a little bit more about that. It was good to see. And yeah, I guess we'll talk about these big fights that have been announced for 1169. That is what we are here to talk about on this episode. I'm just trying to think, is there anything else that we need to get into? I don't think so. This can be a thing going forward if when we've got quiet weeks and stuff like that. drop comments in the comment section below. Ask me some questions, and when we have weeks like this where there's not loads to get into, we'll get into them. If you want to know my opinion on anything, whatever, we can mix it up because there really is not much to talk about, which I know I've made that point a lot already. And so without further ado, let me pull up this 1169 card. 1169 is now taking place at Lumpinee Stadium. And despite the fact that it is at Lumpinee Stadium, which isn't the biggest capacity, and a one championship, I imagine, will sell this out fairly easily. It might be their best card of the year. I would have to, really weigh it up to some other ones. I was a big fan of the three fights that we got at 1166. That was the Qatar card where we got Malakin versus Derrida 2, Tankai versus Tan Lee 2. I just dropped my pen. And Brooks versus Pasio 2. I was a big fan of those rematches. You also had Aliat Bari versus Archambullah on that card that ended up being not the best of watches, let's say. I don't think the rest of the card was that strong. I really did like those three title fight rematches. I thought they all looked like they would be great. In the end, they were so-so. We obviously got a weird ending to Brooks and Pasio. We got a weird ending to Tankai and Tan Lee as well, where they were getting warned for not engaging, and then Tankai just stops him, and you're like, okay, that's a fight, I guess. And then the main event between Malakin and Derrida, I thought was excellent. I did really enjoy that fight. So, I think this card might be their best card of the year. So I would have been very excited for it to go down in Atlanta, but as we spoke about on the last episode, that is no longer the case. It will be at Lumpinee Stadium still on November 8th, and a lot of the same fighters have been added to this card or remained on this card, I should say, despite the change in location. The only big notable absence that we have is Tawanchai versus Joe Nattawut, which, again, as I spoke about in the last video, was quite obvious that that was going to get removed because Joe Nattawut just got stopped in the first round by Superbon. And the reason that fight got put together in the first place is they thought Tawanchai might not be able to make that turnaround. I think maybe if Joe Nattawut comes through Superbon, maybe there's a way that they can try and push Tawanchai to be back in time for that fight. But especially with this moving to Lumpinee, I don't think there's any rush. You don't really need that fight on this card. Give Tawanchai a little bit of time to heal up. Give Superbon a little bit more time so he doesn't have to go straight into another training camp. And then they can get that on, some point early next year. That's fine. Especially, like I said, when this card is already stacked and it's only going to be at Lumpinee, where they're not going to need those extra tickets from the Muay Thai fans that want to see Tawanchai and Joe Nattawut, because I think they will be well served here anyway, because you have the likes of Rob Tang defending his Muay Thai World Championship. So in the main event, you've got Anatoly Malakin versus Rugrug Umar Kane. I believe it's Khan. I always say that wrong. I just think of, Kane. It's got to be Kane. It's got to be Khan. It doesn't sound right, in my head. I can't do it. But yeah, good main event. I'm excited for that. Rod Tang, Jacob Smith, Christian Lee, Alibek Razulov. We've spoken about those three title fights on plenty of occasions. I wrote a whole, over 2,000 word feature about Christian Lee and his return to face Alibek Razulov. I have written a lot of articles about Rod Tang. Let me tell you, fair few about Jacob Smith as well. And spoken about that fight when it got announced for Atlanta, as I did the main event. But we do have a fourth title fight here. Jackie Buntan is going to be taking on Anissa Meksen for the inaugural strawweight kickboxing world championship. This fight was originally booked for One Fight Night 23. I'm trying to remember. That was the Okrayun Alibek Razulov card. Buntan and Meksen got removed from that card. As a result, they promoted Oak versus Razulov to the main event and added the interim title, which Razulov didn't end up winning despite defeating Oak Ryun because he failed hydration, I believe. I don't think he missed weight. I think it was the other way around. And so now we have Razulov versus Lee, but it will not be a title unification. It will just be for Lee's lightweight title. So we have Buntan and Meksen rebooked. Jackie Buntan was injured and so couldn't make the original date of One Fight Night 23, which feels like it was ages ago at this point. I know the timelines kind of got messed around because of different events happening in different times. When was Fight Night 23? July. Maybe that isn't as long as it feels, but yeah, that event feels like ages ago to me. Yeah, we really haven't had that much since then. We've only had the two fight nights, obviously. But we're getting this fight back on. Anissa Meksen returning to compete under the One Championship banner. Her last fight was in December of last year at One Friday Fights 46, where she challenged Petjija for the interim belt before Petjija went on to unify the belts against Janet Todd. That was a really, really good fight. I really enjoyed that one. Anissa has got 3 wins in one championship. They all came in a row, and then she was supposed to do that mixed rules fight with Stamp, where it looked like maybe she wasn't ever going to return to one. It didn't seem like it seemed like there was a lot of confusion, a lot of grey area, a lot of unanswered questions. But we did get her back to fight Petjija, which fair play to her is a very, very tough fight to come back to. And Jackie Buntan, on the other hand, has been a bit of a strange one in that I think so she wins her first 3 fights in one? First 3 fights in one. Fights Smila Sundell for the inaugural strawweight Muay Thai World Championship. It is strawweight, right? Yeah, yeah, it is because, Alicia is the atomweight Muay Thai champ. So Smilla wins the belt in a great fight. Really enjoyed that one. And Jackie goes away and gets 3 wins in a row. One of them earlier this year on the same card as Janet Todd and Petjija. But even after those 2 wins, right, she goes and beats Amber Kitchen by decision and then goes and stops Deandra Martin at One Fight Night 10. I thought they can just run back her and Smilla now. And they obviously didn't do that. They instead Sundell went and fought Diachkova, defended her title, although lost her title on the scales. Interesting to see what Sundell is doing now because that fight feels like it was a long time ago, and we haven't heard anything. But Jackie, riding a 3-fight winning streak after that loss to Smiller, I thought that they just would have booked that fight again, and they haven't. But she is going to be fighting for a title nonetheless, which I think is deserved based on those wins. And fighting Anissa Meksen, interesting matchup. I am glad that this fight was rebooked because I was interested in seeing it the first time around. This fight, it's been known for quite some time that this one was going to be rebooked for this card. No, even when they were talking when this card was still happening in Atlanta, there was talks of a 5th title fight being booked. I thought there was potential that it would be DeBella versus Prajanchai in a rematch, but we have this one instead, and I'm excited for it. I think this is a good fight. Good to get some kickboxing on this card, like a world title fight. So now you have 4 world title fights, and you have MMA, Muay Thai, and kickboxing represented here. 2 MMA title fights as well, which is a good thing for one, because I think that it's no secret that the MMA has been less of a priority as of late. And so to get 2 big title fights on here, the return of Christian Lee and, of course, Anatoly Malakin, is a good thing for the MMA fans that are tuning into One Championship. And I'm sure, like myself, a lot of people first got into One Championship through their MMA. And so it's good to see that represented here, but also, like I said, the kickboxing and the Muay Thai as well. We have 2 other big fights that are announced for this card. And if you look at this as kind of like a 5-fight main card with 4 title fights and then this fight, I think that is fantastic, which is why, again, I make the case for it being the best card of the year for One Championship. You have Marcus Buchecha Almeida returning to face Amir Ali Akbari. We did talk about this fight in a previous episode of the One Report. I'm not sure which episode, but when it was when the news was broke by MMA Fighting, I believe it was. We kind of spoke about it then, but there you go. Official confirmation: Marcus Buchecha Almeida versus Amir Ali Akbari. Ali Akbari is on a winning streak that dates back to his loss to Malakin in 2021. He has beaten Mauro Sorelli, Brandon Vera, Dustin Joynton, and Arjan Buller in that weird fight from March that we already spoke about, where Buller was disqualified for not engaging. Good wrestling background, doesn't tend to use it too much, tends to stand with people. In fairness, I think that's because a lot of the top guys at heavyweight in One Championship are also grapplers, so it kind of counts themselves out. Interesting to see how Buchecha approaches this fight. His last fight was the first loss of his pro MMA career. All of his other wins, 4 wins in a row, came by submission and quick submissions. It is worth pointing out. And then he went the distance with Rugrug in his last fight that was over a year ago now. It was last August. And basically it boiled down to he wasn't able to take Rugrug down despite shooting for takedowns quite a lot. Rugrug, of course, again, has a strong grappling background like Amir Ali Abari does. And so he had to stand with Rugrug, who is just a, I don't think Buchecha looked awful on the feet or anything, but Rugrug has a lot more power than he does. And that kind of was the difference. And I'm interested to see how this one goes because I think that might be the case again against Ali Abari. I don't know if he's going to be able to take him down. Is he going to be able to stand with Ali Abari? I'd say he's probably got a better chance of standing with Ali Abari than he did against Rugrug. I don't think Ali Abari has the same explosivity and knockout power to really trouble him. And Buchecha took some shots in that fight with Rugrug as well, I should say. I would imagine Buchecha will be the faster of the two men. I don't think Ali Akbari is particularly known for his speed. Interesting to see how this one goes because, like I said, I don't think Buchecha is going to be able to get this one to the ground. If he is, then obviously Ali Akbari will be in a world of trouble, considering the grappling credentials that Buchecha brings to the table. But will he be able to strike with Ali Abari and come out on top? Maybe. It's like I said, I think it's probably a better matchup for him than Rugrug was. It was always going to be really difficult for him with his limited striking experience to beat a guy like Rugrug, especially in one championship's rule set where damage is the key and it obviously is scored as a whole rather than round by round. It was only going to take one big shot for Rugrug to probably win him the fight, and you would imagine he will land that if Buchecha has to stand with him for the full duration. And I think that might be a pretty big concern this time around. Adriano Moraes versus Danny Kingad. I mean, why I say this card might be the best fight, best card of the year from one championship. You've got 4 title fights. All 4 of them are good, interesting title fights, in my opinion. Probably the worst one is probably Rodtang and Jacob Smith, just because I know that people were pretty disappointed, maybe is the word, or confused to see Jacob Smith get this rematch. But I do anticipate, as is always the case with Rodtang, that he will put on a fun fight. I'm expecting it to be an entertaining contest. I'm playing with my hair a lot today, which I do a lot anyway, but it's Monday morning and my hair is a mess. So that is why. But yeah, 4 title fights. I'm excited to watch them all. Like I said, I think Rodtang and Jacob Smith will still be a fun fight at the very least. And then you've got probably 2 title eliminators here in Buchecha and Ali Akbari and Adriano Moraes versus Danny Kingad. And finally, the other fight that we had announced this past week officially by One Championship, Eddie Abasolo versus Mohammed Yunus Rabah. I really like this fight. I think this is great. I would have liked to have seen maybe we will still get Luke Lisi on this card, who I adore watching. That guy is so much fun. But I've really enjoyed watching both Eddie and Eunice in their time in One Championship. Obviously, Eddie has a bit more experience. Has fought some tough guys as well. Liam Nolan, Nicholas Larson, which is his 1 win in One Championship. I keep dropping this. God damn. His 1 and only win in One Championship, but I don't think that does him justice because, of course, you look at the 3 opponents he's lost to. Liam Nolan, at one point on the cusp of a title shot. Chai, enough said. And Luke Lisi last time out, which was an incredible fight that ended in a split decision, and Eddie Abasolo came very, very close to winning that one. His style is super fun to watch. Interesting to see how he matches with the incredibly aggressive style of Mohammed Yunus Rabah, who in 2 fights in One Championship has fought the same opponent, and both fights have ended in just over a minute, or just over. Well, the first one went a bit longer, didn't it? It was about half a round, so maybe not. But still very fast fights. So hard to kind of gauge where he's at because the first time around he kind of just bullied and bulldozed his way past Simon Pet. And, people had their issues with that fight, whether he hit him when he was downed and all of that stuff. They booked the rematch for One Fight Night 19 earlier this year, and Simon Pet just ran through him in the rematch. I believe he dropped him 3 times in that opening minute and a half. But I got to say, I was impressed by him in that first fight, the way that he came out and just put it on Simon Pet, which is kind of the way to beat him and yeah, looked very good. But then that rematch really adds confusion to the mix because now we really don't know where he is in this division. Did he just catch Simon Pett off guard? Did he just, startle him early on and stuff? Because the rematch, if you were looking for proof that Muhammad Yunus Rabah is actually that good and that first win wasn't just like, the perfect combination of him landing that shot in that right time, at the right place, all of that stuff. The rematch kind of undid that, I think, and showed that maybe he isn't going to go on to be this world beater in one championship that tears through these guys. I suppose a little bit similar to the way that Nico Carrillo has, even though he has had some adversity in there as well. So I'm interested to see how he gets on against Eddie Abasolo, who, despite not having the most impressive record in one championship, is a very good fighter, and I think a legit tough test for anyone. And yeah, excited to see how he gets on. And yeah, I think that's a fantastic fight. I'm very, very excited for that one. If you were going to ask me about potential fight of the night contenders, that one would be right up there. Although I'm sure the likes of Rodtang and Buchecha and Ali Abari, I think, might have something to say about that as well. We also, final fight on this card that we have announced so far. We have the return of Jake Peacock against Shinji Suzuki. Very excited to see what Jake is able to do here. Very glad that he's getting on this card. Shame it's not in Atlanta. That would have been a very cool stage for him to compete on after his successful one championship debut earlier this year in April. But I am excited nonetheless to see him back again, doing his thing, doing what he loves. That will just about do it, I think, for this episode. Like I said, not much news to get to apart from these big fights that we have announced from one championship, or officially announced, I should say, because we already knew about a couple of them. But there you go. Like I said, that will do it. Thank you for the support on this video. Like I said, drop comments. Let me know what you think about these new matchups. Who are you picking between Buntan and Meksen, Ali Abari and Buchecha, and Muhammad Yunus Rabah versus Eddie Abasolo? Let me know. Drop some comments, drop some questions, whatever you want to do. Get involved. I appreciate the support as always. I will see you all next week, and I will probably see you later this week for another video on this channel once I decide what that is going to be, because last week I just didn't know what to make a video on. There wasn't really anything jumping out at me. I don't want to make a video for the sake of making a video. I want to make a video that's something that I am passionate about and want to talk about. Hopefully that comes across to you on the other side of the screen, wherever you are in the world. But wherever you are in the world, have a good rest of your day. I will see you later. Until then, peace.